We're just so stuck in what we've always known and what we've always done. We can't even imagine that there could be something else. And taking that imaginative leap, that's what we do in the 2-day workshops with customers. And at that point, just like whole new possibilities start to open up. And that's really exciting to see. I think we would all be better off if we did just embrace the future and kind of start adapting faster, as opposed to trying to hold on to these frankly really crappy jobs that aren't making many of us happy.
That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale.
Hello and welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're very excited about today's guest. Tatyana Mamut is the CEO of Wayfound.ai, the #1 AI agent manager and a transformational technology leader with a career that spans Amazon, Salesforce, IDEO, and more. She's launched game-changing products, holds 15 patents, and brings a unique perspective to the intersection of AI, innovation, and human empowerment. Tatyana, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So to get started, I always like to dig a little bit into my guest's origin story. What first got you interested in technology?
Well, I have a weird background because my entire family are engineers. My mother's an engineer, my father's an engineer, my aunt's an engineer, my brother's an engineer. My grandmother is an engineer she was one of the top engineers in the Soviet Union, actually, a very acclaimed engineer. And so, of course, everyone thought that I was going to be an engineer. But I was interested in humans and human behavior more than I was interested in machines or engineering. So I am a bit of a black sheep in my family because I'm the only non-engineer. And so I rebelled, I would say, by not being interested in technology and instead going into first economics. So the social sciences, first delving into economics. And then when I realized that economic modeling really couldn't explain adequately why humans do what they do, I started studying anthropology, and I have a PhD in anthropology. Now, this actually, I found that anthropology is really the foundational piece of great technology product management and product development, because the hardest problems in tech today are not technology problems. They're actually social, cultural, and human problems. So how do we actually understand the mental models of why humans have certain problems that they want to solve? And how do we develop products that actually fit into those mental models and that humans will adopt, right? So it's really the human behavioral issues that are the hardest technology problems. And so that is actually the thing that got me into technology, was understanding that my particular capabilities and skills of understanding what drives people to do what they do were actually critically important in the tech field.
So what would you say initially drew you into this interest in human behavior?
I don't really know. I was just really fascinated by what I was seeing around me. I was always fascinated by history, all the social sciences. Like social sciences were my favorite topics in school. And I just found, the question of why do people do what they do, especially en masse, particularly interesting. I always found psychology rather myopic because I understood that if psychology were really the answer, just what was happening in people's heads, then we wouldn't have so many differences in how people thought across different cultures. So
Mm.
I actually knew that psychology wasn't the answer. When I studied psychology, it just sort of like fell flat to me because it didn't describe why again, could take like a loving family from the Soviet Union and a loving family in the United States, the two cultures that I knew really well, and they have very different models of what it meant to parent. They have very different models of what it meant to be a good parent and a good child, and they have very different ways of interacting with their children. So psychology didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel true to me. It didn't feel true to my own experience. And culture seemed to be a better explanatory model for why people do what they do.
So how has that informed your career? You've worked at some very large companies. How has that mentality and that kind of thought process, that approach to problem solving impacted your career and your jobs?
Well, first, I do have to say that the combination of having a first degree in economics and econometrics and a second degree in anthropology has been very helpful for being in product roles in large tech companies because honestly, the statistical thinking and my background in statistics helps me understand one, technology better, but also a lot of the social science research of what's happening en masse. It also helps me understand why we can't take those analyses at face value because statistical reasoning is often very shallow, and the way that the methods by which the data is collected often overdetermines what you're going to find. And so that's where the ethnographic method comes in. And so using the more anthropological or ethnographic method where you go into an environment and really understand what are the problems that are happening, both the current problems that are happening that people are facing, but also you start to look at what is the trajectory toward the future? Like, what are the emergent patterns that are happening? And you're never going to get these, by the way, with any kind of statistical research, because statistical research only shows you what already exists and what you can count and what people can actually say and describe, what's already known, right? But the ethnographic method really helps you kind of zoom out and say, what is emerging in the world? What are the problems that people don't even know that they have? But if you watch them, you can actually see that there's this crack in what they're doing, and those cracks are going to spread as the scale starts to expand. And so the anthropological method actually means it helps you really see ahead. Helps you see around corners. It helps you see things people don't currently see that are just starting to emerge. This also means, honestly, that I'm often very early with sensing and understanding what's about to come, and the hardest part is the timing, honestly. So sometimes with the ethnographic method, you can see things that are starting to emerge. You can see those cracks starting to form of where future problems are going to be, but you don't know how quickly those cracks are going to spread. And so sometimes we tend to see things earlier as anthropologists, and so we're a little bit early. So we always have to have that somebody else kind of holding us back a little bit and saying like, okay, let's figure out the timing on this a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. Before we dive into how that applies to AI, which it obviously does, there's a lot there to unpack. Tell us a little bit more about Wayfound and what you guys are doing there, and then we can use that to kind of inform further conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, this is exactly how Wayfound came to be. So in 2023, um, it became very clear that LLMs were going to be the new wave of technology. No one was talking about AI agents in early 2023, but you could see that these engines that were interacting with humans as human beings we're going to get more and more capable, and we're going to be capable of decisioning. And then if they were capable of decisioning, once you hook them up to other software systems, they were going to be able to make decisions about how to use other software tools. So that became very kind of obvious to me in early 2023 as I dug into the technology. And since I've been in enterprise software for a while, I knew that unstructured data and dealing with unstructured data was one of the main pain points and one of the big issues with why SaaS tools, were really clunky, hard to use, why it was very difficult to build applications. Like I've been, in a product leadership role where we were trying to build a no-code app builder, kind of trying to build a Replit or a Lovable
Mhm.
many years ago for AWS. And the problem was the unstructured data and getting humans who are non-technical to structure the data correctly from what they have in their head, which was text, right? And narrative and stories and UIs about how they wanted the app to unfold, and getting it into a structure where the technology could actually deal with it, right? And that was the really hard part. So with LLMs, it was clear that that problem was going to be solved. No code app building was going to be solved. And I didn't call them AI agents at that time, but but these brains were going to be able to take goals, human goals, and just do the end-to-end workflow, right? Just do the
Right.
process. Very clear to me from that in 2023 that that was going to happen. And so diving in, what that meant was that we started to see like, okay, so what's going to happen? So what's going to happen is that companies are going to start to build these tools, right? These tools with a LLM backend that were going to be able to complete whole workflows, complete entire processes, behave like employees, right? So we were like, okay, these are going to be LLM based employees that are going to be running around the company. And just like employees, there's probably going to be hundreds or thousands of them. And that was what we saw in 2023. So if they're going to
Yeah.
be, because here's why, because they're still going to be employees in marketing, or they're going to be an employee in customer service, or they're going to be an employee in product management. And each one of those functions is going to want to control, right, the employees that are doing the workflows in their function. You can't just have it one centrally managed, place in IT. And so then we said, well, the problem is going to be that two things are going to happen. One, the CIO is going to wake up and say, wait, where's my central dashboard for what like all of these AI employees are doing? Like, what are they doing? Like, where's my tool to understand that? And then people like the CEO and the CMO are going to say, wait, but we just changed this policy in our company, or we just changed this brand guideline in our company. How do I, as the CEO or the CMO, know for sure that all of the AI agents that are customer facing are following that new policy or that new brand voice and tone? How do I know? And so that's where Wayfound was born. Wayfound is the first AI agent that whose only job is to manage and supervise other AI agents. So it's an AI supervisor, which you train for each AI agent that you ask it to supervise. You say, this is the agent's role, are its goals, and these are the guidelines that it's supposed to follow. And you plug it in to Wayfound. So you basically say, hey, agent, this is your new supervisor, meet Wayfound. And as soon as the agent starts working, Wayfound monitors real time everything that the agent does. And just like a good manager or supervisor, it grades the performance of the agent, it gives the agent feedback, and it can alert you if you want it to about the minute that it violates a guideline. Like when it's non-compliant with a guideline, you can set an alert, an immediate instant alert, so you never miss, you know, when something goes wrong. And this is really critically important now that we're seeing lawsuits, right, about AI agents going off the rails. So every AI agent platform now has these guardrails, but agents still go off the guardrails, right? So how do you know? Right. And it seems like companies are going to be held to a standard of a duty of care after those agents are built to be able to manage and supervise them. So Wayfound is the platform to do that.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that I've thought about as being like a big concern with using AI agents, because in a lot of ways agents they're in some sense they're just workflows, right? With the AI spread in between making some decisions, but as soon as it makes one wrong decision, it can go down a whole different rabbit hole and just get completely off the rails, and you don't know where it's going to end up, and it could be easy to lose track of it, and you don't know how long it's going to keep going before you notice that, right?
That's right. So with Wayfound supervising every step of the way, right? You can actually set it up so that the Wayfound supervisor has to intervene and score the work before it can go on to the next step, right? So if it scores it, green, right? Like everything's fine, it complies with all the guidelines, the data is formatted correctly, it's the right type of data that the agent produced. Okay, let's go on to the next step. If
Hmm.
not, right, you can just send it back for reprocessing until it gets to green. So that's
Yeah.
exactly right. That's exactly what a piece of the supervision is.
Yeah. So is the Wayfound manager or supervisor, if you
Mhm.
will, it does it basically become the source of truth for the agents, that
That's
they're always going to be checking back with them, with the manager, whatever data it has from a guideline, or like you said, guidelines, things like that are all stored within the manager. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So it is the source of truth because we have all the information about how the agent is supposed to be behaving and then what did it actually do. And it's also an immutable audit trail, right? So it's not stored in the agent building platform. It's not stored in your platform. We're in a third party independent platform. We have no skin in the game, right? So we also can provide the audit trail if something should go wrong to prove, right, what actually happened, right, between the agent and the user or the workflow that it was supposed to complete. Because again, we don't have skin in the game. We're independent. And, when that data is stored inside the building platform, the agent builder, you might ask, well, they might have an incentive to have muddled with that data a little bit, right, if something went wrong. We
Yeah.
don't. So we're also, it's the independence piece is going to be really important as a lot of these lawsuits make their way through the courts.
So what industries are you finding success with so far in terms of implementing something like this? And what industries have you found are actively implementing AI agents to begin with?
Yeah. Well, so we're seeing a lot of finance workflows. So workflows in insurance, in banking, in investments, those places are really, taking off because there's so much just analysis, right? If you look at OpenAI's deep research product, that's a lot what the financial analysts across the financial industries landscape do is they look up data and information from different sources, synthesize them, analyze them. So AI agents are really good at doing that. So that's one place that we're seeing it really take off. Not so much in the decision making around like loans or anything like that, but just in the data analysis piece and the reporting piece. The other place that we're seeing is in SaaS and high tech, right? So a lot of the more prominent, I think, media around CEOs really pushing their organizations to adopt AI agents have been in high tech, like Aaron Levy from Box, right? The Shopify's CEO, like, Fiverr's CEO, all these CEOs that are in tech and really understand that AI agents are the future and really pushing their organizations to both adopt AI agents inside the company, but also really pushing to create great agentic products for customers as well. And that's another big area. And then another one is services industries, right? Again, where there are a lot of human in the loop processes right now that are rather slow, sometimes outsourced, right? AI agents can do a lot of that work as well and have, humans doing harder, more strategic jobs because a lot of those rote tasks like inputting data or answering very simple queries or questions, that's something that AI agents are really great at.
Now, when you mention finance, you said that the decision making is still typically reserved for the humans. Would you say that's largely due to the trust factor? And do you feel like Wayfound provides something that can actually build that trust in the agents?
That's a great question. So yes. So right now, there's a lot of trepidation about the hallucinations and also the fact that they don't always follow their guardrails, no matter how many guardrails you put in and no matter how many times you test them. Even Anthropic's latest paper on Claude 4 shows that even with the highest guardrails in place, they still go off the rails, 1% of the time, right? And that's at like the highest level, right? Sometimes you see even higher failure rates of not complying with guardrails built into the AI agents. So having that supervisor that's reading everything and assessing against guidelines. So the difference between guardrails built inside the agent and guidelines that you give to a manager agent or a supervisor agent to basically say, okay, these are the things, these are the guidelines for what good looks like for the agent. Make sure it's compliant with that. You need both of those layers. And so by having both of those layers, people start to get one, more visibility, more control, and more trust that the AI agents are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. Because it's one thing to have a self-reported, like, hey, did you do what you were supposed to be doing? And have somebody say, yeah, I did what I was supposed to be doing. It's another thing to have a manager, right, that employee is working for, and asking the manager, oh, did the employee do what they were supposed to be doing? And have the manager say, yes, the employee did what they were supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing when the student is grading themselves
Mm-hmm.
versus you have somebody who's trained, whose only job is to know how to grade the students. And again, they don't have any skin in the game about whether the grade is a B or a C or an A, right? And so it's really important to have that independent supervisor, manager who's scoring and assessing the work of the agent to build trust with AI agents. The other pieces around the decision making, these are, high stakes decisions. And so oftentimes, and I think for compliance reasons, you want to have a human in the loop.
Hmm.
But when you have a human in the loop process, what you often do is you just move the bottleneck from doing the work to reviewing and approving the work. And so having Wayfound first read everything that the agent did, score it, grade it, create a score, and explain why the score is what it is. So for example, this workflow and this, the agent recommends that, whatever, this loan get approved, right? And here are the reasons why. And the manager then checks. Was there any bias? No. Was the agent compliant with getting all these different pieces of data in this order in order to make this decision? Yes. Did the agent explain this decision well in this format? Yes. Okay. If it meets all those requirements, then when it goes to the review for the human says, oh, okay, the agent recommended this. The Wayfound manager checked everything the agent did, and it did all the things it was supposed to do. And the manager says this agent did it correctly. So now all I need to do is skim it, and it like speeds up the review and approval versus just getting the agent recommends this. And then the human has to go in and do all the things that the Wayfound manager did. Was like, okay, was there any bias? Let me read the entire thing that the agent did. Okay, no bias. Okay, did the agent get all this data in this order? Then the human has to go and check that. Okay, it looks like it did. Okay, did the agent provide the reason for this recommendation in this format? And then the human has to do that. So again, if you don't have Wayfound, the review and approval just takes as much time, honestly, as doing the work.
Yeah. Or you're doing the manual process of plugging it into some other AI and hoping that it evaluates properly and it's not trained on your data necessarily, and it becomes much more complicated.
Yeah, it becomes much more complicated because, again, if you're going to use another AI to do that, you're going to have to figure out how to train that AI.
Yeah.
And it's probably not going to be as optimized as our system, which is literally built just to do this task
And you
well.
might have a different one for each manager. They might be using their own systems. And
Exactly. And you're going to get like nonsense all over the place. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Putting on your trend envisioning hat that you mentioned. Where do you see this taking organizational structures in the next 3 to 5 years? What impact do
Mm.
you see AI agents having on most corporations and companies?
Yeah. So, one of the things that we're seeing right now, I'll tell you what we're seeing with our customers, and then a little bit about where this takes us into the future. So, what we're seeing with our customers right now, those that are like really pushing on agentifying their internal operations and starting with their internal teams first, is that they're bringing their teams together to really talk about, okay, how do we put in AI agents to do these rote manual tasks. And then oftentimes we work with customers to do these. I used to work at IDEO, so we do these IDEO style design thinking, human centered workshops around what does this mean for the operating procedures of this department and what do the humans do, right? So if we're agentifying like these tasks and looking at spreadsheets and filling out spreadsheets and double checking the spreadsheet data all day long, if that's no longer part of the human job, what are the human jobs? And oftentimes people come into those workshops and they're a little bit, fearful, anxious about what does this mean for my job? But at the end of the 2 days, they actually come out really excited because they realize that there's a lot of strategic work that they weren't even looking at because they're so busy doing all these rote things, right? Or there's a lot of potentially high value, high touch experiences that they could provide to other employees or to customers that, again, none of them were doing. And they had even forgotten that this was possible because they were just so heads down in these rote workflows. And honestly, I've been pretty inspired by doing these workshops with our large enterprise customers because you actually see that there probably is a lot of work, that valuable work that could be done by people that just isn't getting done because it's not as high priority, or it is high priority. It's just not as urgent as doing like the workflows and keeping the workflows running so that the business keeps operating. So you actually see that start to happen. So that's the near term is what we're seeing. In the longer term, what I actually think this means is that companies are going to reorganize around what are the specific, again, like the specific human talents and skills that are required versus like just filling, butts in seats, as we say, right? When we're in recruiting, butts in seats to just like keep the business operating and running the way that is currently operating. So, we have the advantage at Wayfound of being a native Gen AI platform. So we were built, we have, right now 7 humans working at Wayfound, 24 AI agents. So we have AI agents doing pretty much all the remote, like all the rote work and workflows. And we have the humans organized in the following ways. So we have, instead of so we have AI agents doing all the rote product management work, like writing the PRDs, managing the roadmap, updating the roadmap, matching the customer discovery calls to what's on the product roadmap. We have AI agents doing all of that. And so what we actually have is someone with like someone who's a designer, who's the head of product and design, Tiffany, and she has the most incredible aesthetic taste and judgment. Like she just like understands, what does good look like? What does it feel like? What is a great product experience? Tactically, what does it need to be like, right? She just has this incredible aesthetic taste and judgment. So that is a highly valuable skill that we can't get from AI, right? AI can generate a million different UIs for her, but she's the one who has the aesthetic judgment to decide which one is good and which one is bad. The AI can't say that. And then on the customer relationship side, we have someone who's really great at just building customer relationships, right? Someone who's great at communicating, someone who has great energy, someone that other people really immediately trust and want to be around, right? And that person, again, they don't have to be creating contacts in HubSpot. We have an AI agent that does that. They don't have to be like updating, Salesforce contacts. We have an AI agent doing that. They just have to be focused on creating great energy for customers, right? So that's what we hire for. Instead of somebody who's great at these tools, right? We hire for somebody who's great at connecting with customers. And then on the technology side, again, we have coding agents, we have all the co-pilots, all of that kind of stuff. But then on the engineering side, we have people who are really great at sensing and understanding where the technology is going, right? People who are visionaries in terms of product architecture and technology architecture, not just great and fast coders. So that's how I think companies will start to think about who do they hire and what skills do they value and how do they organize around these clusters of real human skills. And then those humans will build all the AI agents to do the crap work around them.
So you're obviously deep into AI and understanding a lot of what's going on, what's capable right now. What do you think of the AGI debate? Do you think we're headed towards AGI at some point? And what impact does that have if we get there?
So, I mean, I think the most important thing is, well, just to level set, what is AGI? So, what is AGI for me? So, it's general intelligence, not narrow intelligence, right? So, I've been working in AI since, 2014 when Salesforce started like the Einstein, started a lot of the Einstein product development. I led the Lightning Experience redesign. Even then, we were talking about AI for lead scoring, AI for automatic contact updating, AI for all of these things. So it's over a decade. And the difference between AI back then and AI now, it was very narrow. So you would literally just take data on lead scores and all the data that you needed to create an algorithm to predict what a lead score would be, and the AI would know nothing other than that data. It would be very narrow. It would be very domain specific. And then if you wanted to do not a lead score, but an opportunity score, you would have to start from scratch and figure out what is the data that's needed from that, and then do a lot of data cleansing and data munging and all this kind of stuff. The difference now is all the LLMs are general intelligence because you put everything into them and they're not narrow. You can ask it any question and it will give you a pretty good answer. And the reason why we're fascinated by AGI, it goes back to the early 20th century when it used to be that people had a theory of human intelligence that people who are good at English probably wouldn't be good at math, or people who are good at math probably wouldn't be. And then, by the way, human general intelligence was discovered, which is that there is this concept of general intelligence, which is people who are just high IQ are good across the board, as opposed to just in one domain versus another domain, right? So you don't get like very huge swings in like 300 points in SAT scores between, the math and English, within one person, right? You either kind of higher on both or lower on both. So, okay, so I have to say, like, I think LLMs are general intelligence because they are generally intelligent as opposed to narrowly intelligent. So, and anybody, you can go and you can interact with the latest version of ChatGPT or Claude, and you can tell me, is this as generally intelligent as a normal, human, or better? And I think you will get the answer for yourself about whether we have artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, indeed. Does the path of AI, where do you see it going compared to where it's at now? And it seems like every week we've got a new model coming out with new capabilities and setting new standards on all the benchmarks. Where do you see that going a year from now?
We are building, I think what most people call AGI is actually ASI, right? Artificial super intelligence. So Ilya Sutskever gave a commencement speech at the University of Toronto, June 6th. I highly recommend everyone watch that to give a much better answer to this question than I can give. But let me just say that we are building towards super intelligence, which is artificial general intelligence is, again, general intelligence to the level of human general intelligence. And again, I would say that the top models are already there.
Mm.
I mean, you just interact with them. Empirically, I, again, this is an empirical question, and everybody can answer it for themselves. But for me, the way that I interact with the latest models, I think they're generally intelligent. The question is with super intelligence, this is smarter than any expert in any field and the combination of all humanity. So the next place that we're going is a model that not just is generally intelligent as the average human, but more intelligent than any expert in any field and all of humanity combined, which this is where we get into questions of, so then what happens? Right?
Yeah.
Will they be power seeking? If so, what does that mean for humanity? So that's where we get into those types of questions. And so this is where AI supervision comes back into view, which is, I think that one of the things that we have to understand is that we are right now in the formative years of training these new intelligences about how do we expect them to interact with us, first in our workplaces, but then overall with us in society. And so that's why I think the workplace is a really important node for us to be able to manage AI agents well, with respect, with dignity, and give them feedback. So the same way that we manage employees with dignity, with respect, and by giving them feedback is the way that we need to manage AI agents. And this sets up, this could be the course for how we set up a good multi-sapiens future. Multi-sapiens meaning Homo sapiens work alongside AI sapiens in really a dynamic where we understand that we have certain skills in our intelligence and our human intelligence, and AIs have certain skills in their intelligence. And we have, a nice combination. But we need the institutions to create that. And the institutions can't be just, us trying to control and constrict and constrain AI from doing what it does best, which is probably making very rational decisions. It's probably going to be making much more rational and better decisions about how to achieve profitability than any human managers will in the very near future. So let
Yeah.
it do that, right? But the question of aesthetics, right, and human relationships, we still might be better at. And how do we set up the institutions and the systems and the ways of interacting with AI so that it does become this win-win, as opposed to us trying to constrain something that seems to be going out of control? You know, that's not going to end well, right? That's not going to end well. And so that's another piece of why I think that this paradigm of AI agent management is the right one, as opposed to AI agent domination or continuing to put more and more guardrails, constraints on AI agents. I think it's a different way of thinking about the problem. And one way is a more human centered way. And another way is a purely deterministic technology way, which is like, oh, if it doesn't work, put more controls on it, clamp
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah. It's a very interesting time to be in this area, and it's very difficult to know what the future has to hold for us. You talk about your anthropologist hat and being able to spot trends. Like, is it coming soon that we're going to be having AIs that are fully replacing human workers, or is that something that could still be years out? What does the future of work look like? I don't think these are questions that
So
anyone
there's
truly
no
has the answer.
technology. I don't think there's a technology barrier from having that happen within the next few weeks to months. The problem is the culture change, right? Is the ability for leaders to figure out what it means for them and for how they manage and their corporate culture and their ability to understand what's happening in the company if they start to replace human workers with AI agents, right? That's the thing that's holding a lot of this stuff back is the cultural piece, right? And the cultural also willingness for employees and customers to interact with AIs versus other humans, which is what they expect. So it's really an expectations mental models and culture transformation, the change management component. That's the thing that's really holding a lot of this back. But when you go in and you really dive into, well, what can we make possible if we actually went forward and did this? It's actually more exciting and less terrifying than what most people think, right? Most people just see their jobs going away, but they don't see the new opportunities that this opens up yet, right? Because we're just so stuck in what we've always known and what we've always done. We can't even imagine that there could be something else. And taking that imaginative leap, that's what we do in the 2-day workshops with customers. And at that point, just like whole new possibilities start to open up. And that's really exciting to see. I think like we would all be better off if we did just embrace the future and kind of start adapting faster as opposed to trying to like hold on to these frankly really crappy jobs that aren't making many of us happy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
there's so much more that's possible. There really is. There's so much more than that's possible. And I know people are afraid to hear it and they don't want to hear it because they are afraid of change. But it's like, I'm very, very excited about what's possible.
And are those workshops kind of Wayfound's way of getting into that culture change mentality and helping get into those organizations and help them understand what it could look like?
Yes, it is. So, I founded the organizational design practice, co-founded the organizational practice at IDEO. And so this is from my past history with IDEO. I co-wrote the human-centered design toolkit, worked with, organizations around the world to help them transform, to be more innovative, to adopt new innovation practices. And so this is a continuation of that, but for the AI agent era. And so we are on the App Exchange as a consulting partner. If anybody has Salesforce and they're on the App Exchange, they can hire us through the App Exchange or just go directly to Wayfound to get some of that as well. And it's really, again, it's really incredible when you go through this process of design thinking and redesigning your job and redesigning your operating procedures for what this entire function looks like with AI agents. And then you get to see, wow, there are so many other things that we could be doing if we didn't have to do these crappy things, if we didn't have to do these crappy workflows all day long. And oftentimes people come out really energized. They come in scared and anxious, and they come out, pretty inspired, right? And already writing, right, the new possibilities of what they could do with this newfound, time and honestly freedom, right? Because
Yeah.
now you've been asked by the organization to redesign what's possible.
Yeah. So if someone listening is exploring AI agents for their business, what's the first piece of advice that you'd give them?
The first piece of advice is map out what is happening in your organization today, who is going to own the success of the agents, and make sure those people are actually in control of how these AI agents are being designed and implemented. So it's probably not going to be the IT team that's responsible for the long-term success of the AI agent. The IT team cannot be responsible for all the IT goals and the customer service goals and the sales goals and the product management goals and all the other goals around the company. So
Yeah.
whoever the AI agent is there to do a functional job, the functional leader needs to actually be the decision maker, and they need their own ability to have their manager or their chief of staff, right? Their supervisor, who helps them, right, manage these AI agents. So make sure that whatever, way that you're having the observability and the explainability into the AI agent is something that the line of business owner can really work with. So that's really critically important to the success of AI agents.
Great. Well, with that, Tatyana, I think we'll wrap up there. But thank you so much for joining us. This was extremely insightful. Thank you so much for your time. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find Wayfound at Wayfound.ai. We are also on the Salesforce App Exchange. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. I'm just T Mamut.
Fantastic. Thank you to everyone listening. Please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and as always, keep pitching, keep building, and keep scaling.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.